At every turn, a garden is the answer. Um, it's by far the cheapest way and the most proven way to reduce stress and anxiety. If you're someone that's looking to be healthier, I can't think of anything healthier than exercise, fresh air, and vegetables.
It's been said that if you stop being curious, you stop growing. From the way the world works, to talking to interesting people, to things that go bump in the night. I'm David Wiley, and I've got questions. This is Dave Wants to Know. Well, welcome back to Dave Wants to Know, and today we are literally digging into the soil with a guest who has turned a backyard hobby into a national movement. Now, a few years back, I was trying to get back into gardening, and I wasn't having a lot of success. Went online, and I found our guest, and if you've done that, you've probably seen his face. He's the founder of MIgardener, the mastermind behind the famous $2 seed packet, and the visionary currently transforming a historic 39-acre farm into a sanctuary for rare and endangered heirlooms. Started just as a kid in Michigan. Of course, we are talking about Luke Marion. MIgardener, do we call you Mr. MIgardener?
Hey, people call me a lot of things. They call me a lot of things. I'll take whatever. I'm flattered. I appreciate it. It's an honor. I really do appreciate the time and the platform, and I look forward to good conversation.
So I've been watching your videos for a long time. When I first tuned in, I'm like, no offense, but you look like a little kid. And maybe you were. I don't know how old you were in those early videos.
I probably was. By all accounts, I probably was a little kid when you first came across our channel. I say we now, but back when MIgardener first got started, it was just me because I had a passion. I was in high school. I was a sophomore in high school. So I would have been about 15, 16 years old. And I decided that because I had a passion to show people, I had a passion for gardening, I decided why not use this new and up and coming platform, YouTube, to show people what I was doing. And so I basically just started showing my garden, how I was growing my garden. And then that really snowballed from there. People just asked me, wow, how'd you grow your lettuce so beautiful? How'd you grow your beans so beautiful? Tomatoes, whatever. So I would do these tutorials, and YouTube in its infancy was never really intended to be educational. It was really intended to just kind of be entertainment. They were at the time just trying to kind of make a platform where people could essentially make videos to entertain people. And I had plenty of dumb videos that I put up on YouTube with my friends, just dumb stuff. This was really the first time that I thought, honestly, maybe I'll use this to not just, essentially show how few brain cells I have, but instead actually educate someone on gardening. And so I did, and it started taking off really rapidly. And then from there, I met my now wife, who I was a junior, or sorry, I was a freshman in college when I met my wife, and she kind of was the first person to believe in something bigger than just the YouTube channel. She because she's a few years older than I am, and she had already kind of gone through college and had seen where stuff like this is going, and she said, you have a brand, like you have a good following. At the time I probably had about 5,000 subscribers, which is so strange to look back and think about how I met my now wife when I had 5,000 subscribers, and she saw the vision and the brand well before I ever even. I just didn't have a lot of faith in me to be
Right.
able to make a brand out of it, because I thought of a brand as, a big brand. But she said, no, people trust you. They are looking for these things. And she said, well, you garden, you could easily start to essentially brand these products all in one and create an ecosystem. And so I did. I said, yeah, There's a problem with seeds. There's a problem with fertilizer. There's problems with even information. Just making information more accessible. So I just basically sat down and I thought of different ways that I could create an ecosystem to help people to grow food easier, and using that to build a brand, which now we have a little over, depending on the time of year, between 30 and 35 team members. Um, and my wife and I, we are there, you know, right in the trenches with our team, very present. And then, as you mentioned at the onset, we just got a farm, 39 acres, and that has quickly become a new project, part of the MIgardener's mission of preserving heirlooms, because that's stems from my passion of heirlooms and just biodiversity and the amazing wonders of the world. And so that has kind of segued into being able to grow seed for our seed shop and preserve heirloom apples and the stories that they bring. So it's all full circle, but it's been an incredible journey, to say the least.
Okay, so I feel like I've already committed a faux pas here at the beginning. I called it My Gardener. Is it My Gardener or Am I Gardener?
Depends on who you ask. Like I said, I get called a lot of things. I never really care because, in all honesty, like I said, MI was always MI is in Michigan,
And
but
that's where you're
my
at.
aunt, my that's where we're at. That's where we're
Yeah.
located. My own aunt calls it My Gardener. Um, uh, depending on which delivery driver calls me, he might call it M1 Gardener, ML Gardener. Um, because because when I first created the name, again, I was in high school, and it was just, what am I? I'm a gardener. Where am I? I'm in Michigan. There's a lot of people that just they say the full thing, and say Michigan gardener. Oh, you're the Michigan gardener. I get
Right.
that, 6 times out of 10. Like I said, there's no faux pas with how you pronounce our channel name, because our channel name kind of was flawed from the get go, because there's really never uh, there's no concrete way to really. It's like tomato tomato. That's what I tell everybody. It's like, it's um you know ideally I would have met my wife 3 years prior. She would have said, "This is a very confusing name for just about everybody. You should
Uh-huh.
probably change it." Um, but I didn't, and so now it's stuck. So now I roll with it, and it's okay, because um, what I really care about is not how someone pronounces it, but how we impact the world. So yeah,
So it kind of was a happy coincidence or happy accident ish.
yeah, it was. It was just. It was. It was just, at the time. It was just something simple that I could remember and say, and I, it's stuck. It's stuck. So it was, I guess, a happy accident that people enjoy the name. But like I said, when I first started, I didn't see it being the size that it was either. I said I'm a gardener in Michigan. That's all. I just want to connect with people. But little did I know, we're reaching people from California. We're reaching people from Florida. We're reaching people from Texas. Well, people in Florida seeing the MI, the Michigan gardener, a lot of people, that has been a struggle for us in reaching people. Our largest audience is still Michigan, even though we reach millions of people around the globe, even worldwide. We're viewed in just about, I think, just about every country that has internet capabilities, which is just astounding. but
Yeah.
but the you know the 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 lingering brand identity of Michigan has been an anchor that we have dragged with us, uh, and now we just embrace it. It slowed us down initially until around COVID. Around COVID, people basically said, "Oh, I don't even care. I don't care where you're at. I just want to learn how to garden." And
Right.
around COVID was when we really hit, and we really took off during COVID. And that was probably one of the biggest trajectory changes for us as a channel, as a company.
Like,
You know, no longer, 2018, 2019, MI, the Michigan part of it was so it was so dominant. And then when people said, "I don't even care," then people started from other states started coming onto our channel. They started seeing our content and realizing that it was the same quality information. And that was what was so amazing, was that that allowed our brand to then reach, and we just grew and grew and grew. And now we have not stopped. We've continued growing every single
I
year since.
I know I mentioned to several people that I was going to be talking with you today, and everyone who I know who gardens knows who you are out here in California. So you're
Well,
definitely
I'm
getting some
flattered. I
viewership out
appreciate
here.
that.
Hey,
That
so
means a
let's go
lot.
back
That
to the
means a lot.
beginning, though. And we can get into where you are now, but I want to start at the beginning because when I first watched those videos, and you look very, very young, but extraordinarily knowledgeable. Where did that come from? Where did your interest from gardening come from? And then where did that knowledge at such a young age come from?
Yeah, so I started gardening when I was a kid. My mom was very big into flower gardening, but not very big into vegetable gardening. And because growing up, I had been outside in the garden, a part of the garden for basically the entirety of being alive for 6 years. I was in the garden from you know uh, basically a toddler all the way to a young kid. And one day my mom said, "Would you want to take care of a plant?" And I said, "Yes, but I don't want it to be a flower. Like flowers were too girly. I wanted to do
Right.
something different." And so she said, "Well, what about a vegetable?" And I said, "Well, I don't really like vegetables, but sure, I'll give it a shot." And I was a tomato. It was a tomato. It was a sensible thing. She picked up a little plant from a greenhouse, and I threw it in a pot. And after about the first week, she said, "Luke, your tomato hasn't died yet. Are you enjoying growing it?" I said, "Yeah, it's really fun." And I would find myself checking on it and checking on it. Every day I would check on it. And it became this thing that was very intriguing to me, from a maybe to a this is really interesting. And I was so amazed when the tomatoes started to ripen and we brought the tomatoes in and we took them into the house. What I thought to just be just a "Hmm, maybe I would do it," turned into a "I love this. Can I expand on that?" They gave me 30 square feet. They had this old wood pile behind their garage, and they no longer had wood there, but it was just this kind of dead patch where grass had died. And I said, "Can I it has good sunlight. Can I grow a garden there?" And they said, "Sure. Why not? There's a lot worse things you could be getting into." So that was about 8 years old, and from 8 until probably about 13, from 8 until about 13, that was my garden, 30 square feet. And then from there, I said, "Man, it was not enough. I needed more." I had been bit by the bug, and that little 3 by 10 area just wasn't enough. So I said, "Can I expand?" And there was another little flower garden that my mom had, and we rented a little tiny rototiller, and she let me till up her flowers, which was the craziest thing in the world. Her little flower garden, because she just saw that I had a passion for it. And to
That's
this
cool.
day, she would say, that little flower garden. She had a huge flower garden. This was just a small little one, and she still would say to this day, you know, I think he needed that vegetable garden more than I needed that little flower garden. So to till that up was a huge thing, a huge vote of confidence for me. And so then I moved to 50 square feet. And that's actually right then and there is when I started making videos, was when I moved into the fifty square feet. And you can still see on YouTube the original 50 square foot garden that we had, that we started with. It might have had two little rows of lettuce, two two tomato plants, a few peppers. It had everything that you'd want from a big sized garden, but it was my garden. It was my garden, and I was really proud
Mm.
of it. And yeah, and that's how I got started. It was my dad wasn't into gardening. My mom was into flower gardening. My grandpa was a dairy farmer, and my grandpa and grandma on my other side, um, they were they were city people. They didn't have any interest in vegetable gardening whatsoever. So it really just was a stroke of luck.
So that first video, what you said, 2011, what was the goal? Was this a
Yeah.
school project, or a bunch of friends got together, or did you just do it on your own?
Yeah, it was nothing other than just wanting to connect with people. Being passionate about growing a garden when you're 15 years old, that's a bit of a it's a bit of an odd thing. 15-year-old boys are they're getting into sports. I played sports, but I wasn't really into them. I played them, but I wasn't all about them. 15-year-old boys they're off making trouble. They're getting dirty, they're getting scraped and bruised and riding bikes and getting into mischief. And I just wasn't into any of that. That wasn't my thing. So I was a little bit ostracized, and I was kind of cast off as kind of a weird kid, a nerd, a geek. And so I really was like, well, I had a small circle of friends that we make dumb videos with. Maybe I could have more friends that are interested in gardening. Maybe I could just reach more people my age. That's how it started, was just trying to reach people my age using videos on how we garden and how I garden. And yeah, and so it was more or less just to connect with people that were like-minded, really.
And at what point did you realize, okay, this is more than just a hobby or something that you like to do in your spare time, but maybe this is something that could be more?
It became more than a hobby only about probably about 4 years ago. It became more than a hobby, um, which is really funny
Mm.
because, you know, we had always been, even when our videos started to gain traction, it was still just my home garden. My home garden, it was my backyard. Well, it started out as my parents' backyard. Then I rented some space from my parents because I wanted to go really big. I wanted a really big garden. And my parents had a small cottage up on the lake, up on Lake Huron on the east side of Michigan.
Okay.
And they they had they had about 5 acres of just kind of grassy yard, scrubby grass. And I said, could I rent that from you? And I'll pay you. But I want it to be mine. And so I paid them a small amount. I paid for the water and I paid for a bit of the land. And that was my first, I owned that, I paid for it. And that was about 5,000 square feet. And that was still my garden. Everything I produced, I had 100% say of what I did. It was 50 by 100. And it was still a hobby. It was for me to make videos, to grow my favorite things and to have room to spread my wings, but it was still a hobby. Got married, moved to our first house, and then it was in our backyard. It was literally our whole backyard. I just
Hmm.
converted to a big vegetable garden. We had fruit trees. We had it was about 100 by 50, so about 5,000 square feet, same size as what was up at my parents' cottage, but it was on my property now. And I had fruit trees, and it was just such a really cool thing. And still, it was a hobby because it was really nothing more than we needed personally. And that was until about 2018, about 2019, 2020. But 2019, 2020, we knew that we were really starting to take off. At that time, we'd been selling seeds, we've been selling fertilizer, but only for about 2 or 3 years. So it was starting to become a business, but the gardening side was so much of a hobby still. So much of a hobby still. And right around 2019, 2018, 2020, somewhere right around there. That 3 year period was such a blur, but that's really where once we hit just this stratospheric growth, that's really where I said, "Oh my gosh, we need a space. We need a space." And that's when we took a huge leap of faith. We were a home-based business, air quotes around business, because it was in our basement. And truth be told, I did not see it as a viable business. It was not paying the bills by any means. We were quite literally living on ramen. We had,
Mm.
I mean, it was paying the bills, but I mean, we were not. I would have made more money working part time at, a below minimum wage job. That's how
Right.
real this was. But then it started growing. And I was like, okay, we really need some space. So that's when we moved. We actually rented, we renovated and rented out about a 1,200 square foot um, commercial building in a town, one town north of where we lived, and turned that into our very first visualization of what we wanted for a brick and mortar store to sell seeds and fertilizer. And literally from there, it was this snowball that didn't stop rolling. And it just took off and grew and grew and grew. And then it grew to the point where I said, okay, now we are no longer in hobby territory. This is my profession. This is my
Hmm.
job. This is real. Um, at that point, we took a massive, massive leap of faith, and we we refinanced our home, took a cash out refinance to get a down payment for our very own building. We wanted to buy a building that we could call our own, and that's where we bought an absolute dump of a building. It was all we could afford. It was all we could
Right.
afford. Bought an absolute dump, and we did everything. I
Oh,
did the paint, I did the flooring, I did everything. I did everything. And then as we started getting a little more cash, then I hired people to do the electrical. I hired people to do the plumbing. I hired, the big stuff. And it took about a year and a half to fully renovate our new MIgardener headquarters because we were working with a pretty shoestring budget. So it took so much longer. People that are renovating a building that have good cash flow and good cash reserves, they can snap their fingers, get all the resources together, and in 3 months you're done. It took us a year and a half because you know, you'd a la
yeah.
carte everything. I'd say I
Right.
had a couple $1,000s I can spend on some electrical. Okay, we'll do the electrical. I have a couple
Right.
$1,000. We need new plumbing. All right, we'll do the plumbing. And it just took so long. But all the while, we were operating out of that 1,200 square foot building in Port Huron, which is where we were located at the time, while we were renovating. So at least we weren't out, and that is when we realized it was no longer a hobby.
And so that's kind of around COVID time
Yeah, it was
ish.
right around 2019 to 2020 is when we really took off, and 2020, the spring of 2022 is when we actually moved into our actual building that is now our kind of our headquarters that we operate out of today.
And so many of us here in California and probably across the country know you from your videos and the website where we buy our seeds and our fertilizer, but you actually have a physical store. So if we visit Michigan, we could actually come by and see your place in person. That's cool. Is
Yeah,
is there
you
a
sure
difference
can. Yeah.
between is there a difference for you running brick and mortar and the online sales, or can you blend them or
Yeah, they're blended. We actually consider it kind of we call it a click and mortar. A click and mortar
mm,
is a new type of business where it's online hybrid with it's kind of a hybrid business where it's online and brick and mortar. And so we do pickup in store. So if you place an order online, you can do pickup in store. But then also we service customers that are local. So people just come into the shop and anything we have on our website, we have in store. And it's always kind of just been a way for us to outreach, because one of the things that we're really passionate about, we've always been from the very get-go, we've been passionate about community, and we want people in our community to be seen. You know, we could really be in a warehouse anywhere. We could be in a warehouse anywhere, could have saved us tons of money, it'd been way less hassle, but because we wanted to be in the community and service the community, it was super important for us to have a place where community could come to us.
I'm curious because one of the things you're known for is the price of your seeds. Your seeds, if I go to the big box stores, we're looking at 4, 5, 6, maybe even more dollars for that. You guys, I think originally they were $1 a pack. If w- or am I
Yes.
misthinking? So they were a
They
dollar a pack.
were pre-COVID, they were a dollar a pack, and now they're 2 because, we realized, well, not only were prices going up, but, we were we were basically pricing ourselves out of business. We were trying to be very affordable so that anyone could buy our seeds, but we realized, "Oh my goodness, we are almost losing money on every package of seeds we produce."
Yeah. Well, and so that's you mentioned you're eating ramen and business is good, but you're not pulling in a lot of money. Why was it so important for you to keep those prices low like that?
Well, because starting out, we realized that the market was really entrenched with big companies that had been around for a long time. They had trust built with them. You have huge seed companies that have been ingrained with consumers for decades. And if we were ever going to break through those barriers, we needed to do something radical and crazy so that we could kind of get attention. And so that was something that we tried to do, was we tried to get we tried to kind of almost get a competitive edge by really taking almost a zero profit motive. You know,
Yeah.
we were a for profit company, but it was so lean and so low profit margin because we really looked at it for the first 4 or 5 years like advertising. Just how many packets of seed can we get in front of people, and do as much as we can ourselves to keep the cost as low as possible to really lower those barriers to entry. You know, when someone is deciding if they want to try something new, you know, humans are so risk averse, and I figured that out early, that people are so risk averse that, you know, if you find a restaurant that you like, you're more likely to go to that restaurant than a new
Hmm.
restaurant. If you go to that restaurant and you find a thing on the menu that you like, you're more likely to order that again than you are something new from that menu. And the same thing applies with everything that we do as humans. So I needed to give people an excuse to try us, you know, and it was about as close to free as possible because it was actually inspired by the free sample model. When you go to like Costco or some of your big box stores, they'll sometimes have samples, free samples, and no one says no to a free sample. But we knew that we couldn't do free because free would be so radical and so crazy that it would be unsustainable. So we said, let's just basically cover our cost. That's really what it was. And most people don't realize that. You know, most people, when they see us go from $1 to $2, they say, whoa, your seed price is doubled. I said, no, that's us actually being able to like put food on our table, because for 4 years we weren't making a penny. I mean, we were literally not making a penny. Um, you know, we were doing everything we could to keep our prices low so we could enter the market and get people to know about who we were.
And I think that's something that's cool about what you do on social media, whether it's Facebook or YouTube. You're very open. You kind of break down, as they say in the movies, break down that fourth wall. And I remember when you raised prices, you came out and were and posted and did videos and said, "Hey, this is the reality of it. We're running a business, and this is still the best deal there is out there." And I really appreciated that. I know you probably got some pushback from some people, but I thought it was refreshingly honest to have someone say, "Hey, uh, this is what's going on. And it's not just with the seed prices. There's been other things where you've been very open and personal about
Mhm.
your business. And I've seen you
Yeah,
defend your employees
transparency.
or,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Transparency has always been transparency and community are two big pillars of how we operate. That's always been our thing. Because I I've always told people that we're gardeners first, taking care of gardeners. The profit, if you only focus on profit, you get very skewed. It's a very it's a very one-sided path when you have a profit first motive. And so we have a passion first motive. Our passion is community. Our passion is our garden. Our passion is um, creating lasting change. And so for me, I say, look, I'm going to put my passion first, and then the profit will follow. And and it has. We're debt free, thankfully, and we have 32 amazing people that work with us, and they they are all very very happy to work with me. And you'll notice I say work with me. It's always been something that I am really big on as well. Is people don't work for me, and they're not slaves. They work with me.
Mhm.
We work hand in hand. We take care
That's
of each
great.
other. We're a family, and so we're very when I wouldn't ask them to clean the toilets if I wouldn't clean them myself. It's always work with. And even though we do different tasks, we work together as a team. And everyone that works here loves it, absolutely loves it. We have an incredibly low turnover rate, and it's all a testament to just transparency. They all know what the mission is, they all know what the profit margin is. We're very open about our profit margin. We're we're very open about our costs because again the thing is that people people that see that transparency, they build trust. And that has been a huge thing. We've actually really kind of changed the industry. The industry had gotten very secretive with costs and where they source seed and how much, where the seed is coming from, all those things, very secretive. And I said, why? The only reason why you'd ever need to be worried is if you were doing something that people wouldn't be pleased to know. And so I said, I'll let them know everything. I'll let them know literally everything. And so whether that's doing an interview with one of our farmers, showing how he's growing our seed for our seed shop, to our cost breakdowns, to just, doing employee interviews. Like we are super transparent because that's what builds trust, and that's what I prefer. So
Yeah. And that has to be part of the reason why you've got what 1.5 million followers or more now. It's
yeah.
interesting what you said about leadership. If you'll clean the toilet, or I don't know, how'd you put it? You wouldn't ask somebody to do something that you wouldn't do yourself, essentially.
Yep.
And
At 100%.
we talked to a fire chief not too long ago who had been the head of Santa Barbara County Fire, big fire department, and that was his philosophy. He almost said the same thing, only in firefighter terms. I'm wondering where that leadership philosophy comes from. Is that something you just kind of felt like you were raised with, or do you have an influence in leadership?
Well, so growing up, family was always really important. Family's always been very important since my grandparents' family was paramount. And so when I had the ability to have people work with me, I said, I really looked at my first couple jobs that I had in high school, and so much of how I operate was just based off of I would either live it through real world examples, or I would see it and through conversation that I had with other peers, and I would really be able to see this common trend, this sentiment of disdain for your boss, or that a boss was bossy, or that a boss was kind of just barking orders and sitting in some ivory tower. And I said, if I ever get to the point where I can have someone that I can employ, I want to do the exact opposite. I want to do the exact opposite.
Hmm.
So again, that's just from treating people like, how we would like to be treated, that golden rule. And it's always been since day one, it's been I won't do something. I won't ask someone to do something if I myself won't do it. And we also don't even use the word boss. I am very firm on that. For everyone that comes in the door, their very first week of orientation, the first thing they learn when they walk in our door is you don't call me your boss. I am not your boss. I might be the founder. I might be your coworker. I might be a team lead, but I'm not your boss. I said, if I have to boss you around, there's the door, because the thing is, a boss is a babysitter, and I don't want to be a boss. I want to be a leader, and I want, we hire adults. We hire adults, and adults don't need to be bossed around. Um, so we believe in self regulation.
I'm curious how you feel about those kids when you were young who maybe weren't so kind to you and your friends. How do you feel about them now looking back? Do you see any of those people? Do you have a see, look at me, I made it? Or yeah, I'm kind of interested what how your perspective is.
Yeah, originally I took that mentality. Originally, I had because I was very bullied through high school. Um, not just not just mocked, but actually bullied.
Mm,
And so initially, I was very spiteful. I had a lot of kind of disdain, and I realized that that wasn't really something that I was super proud of. I wasn't proud of. I wasn't really proud of what I was putting out, because it was almost like I realized that that wasn't sustainable, because at a certain point I realized that if proving them wrong was my only ammunition going forward, that at a certain point, if that ammunition ever went away, that I would really, I was really burning myself out trying to almost fight a ghost, because they
mm,
moved on. Half of them probably went off to colleges, never saw them again. They don't care what I'm doing, and therefore, why should I care what they're doing? And um, I also, uh, during college, I really was doing a lot of kind of soul searching myself, trying to figure out what I wanted from my own life. And um, my father-in-law actually has this saying that I live by now, which is that the sun comes out for everybody. He's
mm,
uh, he immigrated here from Mexico about 35 years ago, and he's been living the American dream, and he's just hustling, and he's a great guy. And he said, "Luke, like the sun comes out for everybody," and he told me that all the time.
mm.
And that's really what I live by. Like I want the best for everybody, even if someone doesn't wish me, wish me well. It's more of a reflection of how they feel than how I should feel. And so the people that bullied me, admittedly, I used to, you know, um, poke a little voodoo doll, hoping that they would feel it,
Right.
you know. But nowadays, it's just I hope they're doing well wherever they're at in the world. I hope they're doing well, because the sun came out for me, and I hope it comes out for them as well, because that's just for me. It's just a better way to live. I feel so much more free and happy not having to prove somebody wrong.
Great advice from your father-in-law. Hey, let's get back into gardening, okay?
Yeah,
You once said you only spent 15 minutes a week in your garden. How is that possible? I've seen your gardens on the videos. Is that true? Do you still do that?
still true to this day. Yep, still true to this day, despite the fact that our garden has gotten substantially larger. Um, I I only work 15 minutes a week in my garden. I might spend a couple hours just enjoying it, but I only work
Right.
about 15. So that's weeding, watering, fertilizing. And that's actually the premise of the book that I wrote back in 2018. I was approached by a publishing company, and they said, "We want you to write a book." I said, I'm not going to write a book for years. I said, I'm not going to write a book because everything you want to see is on YouTube videos. I did them all on YouTube. And they said, we'd like you to write a book. So I said, okay. I have developed this kind of autopilot gardening method
Yeah.
where all these systems, they they essentially work for me so I don't have to work for it. And that autopilot approach has really allowed me to even still to this day only work about 15 minutes a week in my garden because I don't want to toil. I don't want to be sore and oh man, I'm tired from working in my garden because that's not fun. Like I don't know anybody that has fun being tired.
No.
At least not me. And so
So
I like to enjoy my garden. Like I like to go out and harvest and enjoy. And so
and
I still true to this day, only 15 minutes.
interesting. And part of that is a philosophy of high intensity spacing that, a lot of times you read the back of the package and it'll say tell you how much you should space, but your philosophy is a little different.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's very different. High intensity spacing is basically taking the original spacing and cutting it in half and maybe even going more than that. Because I realized early on that the garden was originally, my grandpa, he was a dairy farmer, but
Hmm.
he had a small little vegetable garden that he would grow in. And all of his other friends and neighbors were all row farmers. They were row crop farmers. Soybeans, sugar beets, you know, sweet corn, field corn, whatever, right? So they would take their spacing and they would basically not change a thing, but they'd put it right in their garden. And I
Uh,
thought that is very inefficient because in a home garden, you don't have large farming implements to work around. You don't have big tires. You don't have your equipment is your hands basically. So why not just scale it down rather than just transfer it? Why not actually scale it down into something that is accurate? And that's where the idea of high intensity came from. We were actually the very first. I still to this day am so proud to say this that if you talk to farmers or like market farmers, people that grow food on a large scale but very high
mhm.
intensity, the term high intensity gardening or high intensity growing came from our channel. I had never heard it, and I was subscribed to dozens and dozens of channels, people that made it their livelihood, people that I mean, I had my feelers out there. I had never once heard of the term high intensity until I started talking about it. And then about 2, maybe 3 years later, I started hearing it come on, and they call it high intensity or biointensive gardening or biointensive farming. And that was a term that came in about 3 years after we started coining that term of high intensity gardening. And so it's always been kind of a proud moment to say that we really kind of pioneered something. And that I can't take full credit for because it was inspired by Mel Bartholomew and his square foot gardening approach. Square foot gardening was the idea of taking a square foot and packing as many plants into that square foot as possible to make your garden hyper efficient. And so I basically said, I'm going to take the square foot gardening approach, make it not only even more efficient, but also abandon the whole square foot idea and just go sheerly based off of spacing. That's really what it is. And that was where I used the term high intensity spacing.
So the traditional wisdom is, though, if you plant things too close together, that they're going to rob nutrients from each other or sunlight. But you haven't found that's the case. So what's going on here? The traditional wisdom says one thing, and now we've got you and Mel Bartholomew saying another thing.
Yeah, the traditional idea of too much crowding resulting in poor results can be true if you go to the extreme, obviously. If you really crowd, there can be some problems. But traditionally, the reason why a lot of people thought there would be problems is because in a field where you're farming that field, you don't have the ability to amend the soil to the level that you would need to grow them closer. What you find is if you um, if you look at population density, I studied population density, and this is really what helped me to understand how this concept works. About 100 years ago, you had there were cities, but the cities were far and few between. It was mostly 200 years ago. It was very agrarian. There was
Yeah.
farming communities, and there was big swaths of land in between houses. Well, when the Industrial Revolution came around and everything started getting mechanized, it allowed us to grow more food on less space more efficiently. And so people then moved into the cities. Well, the reason why they could move into the cities and not have to have their own food was because food was being mechanized and brought into the cities. And so then essentially the food was being brought into the cities and people could live far more closely together. And then you had houses, and then now you have apartments, and then you have high rises, and you have population density that is sustainable because of systems that allow for it to be sustainable.
Mm,
If you were to take away the food supply, New York City would starve in a matter of a week. If you
right.
were to take away the food supply, if the trucks were not bringing the food into New York City, they would all leave New York City at the blink of an eye. The same thing applies to people's garden. Your plants will wither if you don't bring to them the systems of efficiency: soil health, soil microbes, soil texture, soil nutrients. Those are all very important. You have to have the texture, you have to have and adequate water as well, but the texture needs to be loose so the roots go down, not out. The water needs to be deep so the roots go down, not out. There needs to be nutrients in the soil so that they're not competing for nutrients. They have enough to sustain themselves. There's enough food for those plants to survive. And then, and then obviously the type of crops that you grow. So you can't grow a tomato next to a lettuce. It'll shade it out, and the lettuce will die.
Mm.
So it's about blocking your garden and the tomatoes, the lettuce, the beans, stuff that kind of coexists. You can pack them closer together, and ultimately, we're covering the soil with plants because weeds will outcompete. They will disturb that balance because they can grow far faster. So by weeding the garden for the first couple weeks until the plants get growing, then as they start to grow, the leaves touch, they shade the soil, they suppress weeds, they hold water in the soil, and that actually allows the soil texture to stay retained. The nutrients stay in the soil better. They're available to the plants, not to the weeds. And then the weeds can't grow because there's no access to sunlight. So they get smothered. And that allows us to essentially work very, very little in the garden with the water, very little, fertilize very little, weed very little. And that's most of the work that we do in a garden.
Interesting. Now, it has to be much different now. So you went from what, 10 square feet or so to 500 square feet to 5,000 feet. Now you've got a 39-acre farm. That's a whole different ball game, isn't it?
The 39-acre farm is definitely a bit of a different ball game. We have certainly adapted different styles. Um, so we're most of what is on our farm are seed plots. So we have about 2 acres of well, I shouldn't say most of our farm, but 2 acres of the 39 are seed plots. Those
And
are
what does
seed
that mean?
plots where we grow. It's a seed plot that allows us to cultivate seed for our seed farm or for our seed shop. So we will grow tomatoes with the sole intent of not eating the tomatoes, but instead crushing them down for seed production.
Gotcha.
Those are all seeds that go into our packets. So we have about 2 acres of seed plots, peppers, tomatoes. We grew cilantro. We grew lime basil. tons of different seeds that we actually grow for seed production. And so that's about 2 acres. And then we have our garden space. Our garden space is roughly about maybe about 10,000 square feet of garden space in ground and raised beds. That's our garden. The remainder of that space is all heritage fruit trees. So
Oh,
we can't necessarily crowd them too close together because that tends to be a bit of a problem. But we also didn't want it to be like a commercial farm. We didn't want them to be so close that they were essentially being replaced because commercial orchards will replace their trees every 7 to 8 years.
oh,
It just is so wasteful. I mean, a tree should be able to last 75 to 150 years if it's properly maintained. And so we obviously kind of abandoned a lot of the farming practices. A lot of people that know what we're doing, they question why we're doing it the way that we're doing it because they say, well, you're never going to make any money doing that. You're never going to, your efficiency is so low. And I said, well, that's because we want these trees to grow out and be beautiful. We want them to be expansive and produce tons of fruit and look really beautiful, but also live a long time because they're heritage. They're heritage trees. They're not. They're not a. You know. They're not a
and
cash crop
heritage
for us.
a heritage tree means what?
A heritage tree basically means a tree that's been around for at least 25 years, and so it's a variety of tree that has been around for at least 25 years. It could be as old as 400 or 500 years old, or as old as say about 25 years. And those are varieties that are not they're not modern. You know, you could say, for instance, um, Granny Smith is a heritage variety. It's been around for over 100 years, believe it or not. It's been
Hmm.
around for a very long time. It was discovered in Australia, believe it or not.
Huh.
It was a tree down in Australia, and um, and it's been since the early 1900s. It's been around. So that's a heritage tree. Whereas like like Honeycrisp has really only been around for about maybe at most about 20 years. It was around longer than that, but it wasn't really discovered until about 15, 20 years ago. It's
Wasn't
relatively
there
new on the market.
some breeding or I don't know what they call it, but wasn't that kind of built in a lab, so to speak, in Washington?
It was part of a breeding program. The fascinating thing that I've actually really enjoyed about learning about apples is that there are universities that will dedicate huge, huge parcels of land, and their whole intent is to take an apple seed, throw it in the ground because every apple that grows from a seed is genetically unique, completely genetically unique. So they will literally
Interesting.
take tens of thousands of apple seeds, throw them all in the ground, take the seedlings and spread them out in the field. And then what they do is they go through as they're maturing and they taste the apples and they say, are you good? Are you not? If they're not good, they literally cut them down. They just cut them down,
Hmm.
and those are known it's like a breeding program. It's not necessarily done in a laboratory. It's not necessarily, there's nothing wrong with it other than it's just it is a shotgun approach. You're essentially taking birdshot of apple seeds and just blasting it into a field, hoping that something is a good commercial viable variety.
And that's the
And the
thing.
gentleman that actually
They're looking for something that's going to sell in the grocery store.
Yep,
And where
absolutely. They're
heirloom
looking for something that's gonna sell.
where heritage or heirloom apples, I'm trying to get this, or maybe have a more historical value to them while they may not have a
Absolutely.
traditional taste. Is that, am I warm?
100%. Yeah, they all have unique stories. They all have very unique backgrounds. And so part of what we are trying to do, and some taste incredible. Some of them taste absolutely incredible. They might not have the crunch and the wow factor of a Honeycrisp, but that's Honeycrisp just has the wow factor. When you bite into it, there's nothing quite like it. But the
Hmm.
flavor of a Honeycrisp, it's it's pretty subpar. Whereas if you have something like, we have over 1,500 different varieties of apples. 1,500 different varieties. You might taste one and it's just dry. Texture is terrible. But you taste it and you say, "Wow, there's hints of clove, there's hints of mulling spices, there's hints of cinnamon." They might be slightly raisiny tasting, or
Ooh.
kind of almost like there might be maybe some banana, some pineapple flavors. There's like some other fruitiness. It's very unique. There's deep flavor to it. Wow, that's interesting. Even though the texture is garbage compared to a Honeycrisp apple, the flavor is incredible. And so ultimately, we're not necessarily breeding for we're not growing, sorry, we're not growing these apples for one specific intended purpose. We're growing them because all of these varieties have stories and they have history. And essentially, since apple trees can live to be 75 to 150 or even older than that years old, we want to carry the stories with them so that people can learn about them. Kids can come to the farm, pull out our when our farm is open, they'll pull out a big flip book, A through Z, and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, the pig snout apple? That's crazy." Or the black gilliflower, or any one of those. There's so many different varieties. They'll read about them. They'll read the origin story, and it's like opening up a time capsule. So,
I have a passion for apples myself. We only have a half acre here at our place, but I do have a small apple orchard in the back that is, I wouldn't say the most successful. I'd love to have some help, but I'll have to probably look up one of your videos. But what about I see adopt an heirloom fruit tree. Are you guys doing that?
so they're currently all claimed right now. That was very
Okay.
successful. That was
Okay.
awesome. It was part of our mission. We will be doing more of it in the future, but we need to get some more. We need to get a little bit more land. we are fully, we are like fully like we are bursting at the seams right now.
Bursting.
Um,
Speak. Oh,
and
go ahead.
yeah, bursting. No, I see.
S-
So we plan on doing that in the future, but we just right now we are all of the trees that we have available have been adopted, or
That's
we
good.
just like we have other trees. Like we have peach trees, for instance, but the life of a peach tree is only about 15 to 20 years. So no, we don't have anyone adopting those trees because we
Mhm.
don't want someone to adopt a tree that's going to just die.
Right.
Um, I just like to eat peaches, so we have some peaches. But the adopt a tree platform was done because trees were rather expensive, and because we have not found the infinite money glitch that can just allow us to just manufacture money out of thin air. I needed to find some way to get these amazing varieties, and so we said, well, if someone wants to pay for them, it will plant them, because a lot of people, they live in an apartment, or they might have a loved one that they want to plant it in their honor, or someone maybe lost a loved one and wanted to plant it in their honor, or a pet.
Uh-huh.
We had people that have pets that they've had to say bye to, and they've adopted it for their pet. And so we on every tree, we hang a little metal engraved tag that says who it was adopted by. So for instance, it might be, John Doe adopted a Macintosh apple, and
Mm.
it'll just say, adopted by John Doe, on the branch. And so when you come to the orchard, when it opens to the public, hopefully in the next couple, I'm hoping in about a year to 2 years will be open, and you can come and stroll the orchard, checking out all the different apple varieties, and then you'll see all the different names that they're that adopted them. So that was the objective, and it was very successful. It was really
Well, I'm
loved by a
glad
lot of
it
people.
was. So were these trees that you planted or grew yourself, or did you go and source them from another location, dig them up and plant them there? I'm trying to understand how that works because generally apple trees, what, take
Both.
s- 6, 7 years or more to fruit?
Yeah. Yeah, both. So we partnered with nurseries that grew the apple trees. So we have quite a few that were grown by other nurseries. And then we also did grafting. So grafting is the process of taking a little bit of an apple variety, whatever that variety is. We cut the bottom off and then we fuse it. We just basically tape it. We wrap it up real tight to it's called a root stock, and that root stock is kind of just a garbage apple. It doesn't really do much other than grow an apple tree. So you fuse a good top onto a bad bottom, doesn't even matter anymore. The bottom grows the top becomes this beautiful apple tree, and that retains the variety. That retains the genetic variety that it came from. So we've planted about 1,500 different varieties. We've sourced from nurseries probably about 800, and then we've gone out and grafted about another 700 ourselves. So we'll reach out to people and say, can I buy some scion? Or people will reach out to us and say, I have an old apple tree, can I send some in? I say, sure. Just let us know the name or the variety. If it doesn't have a name, describe the apple. They'll send in these little clippings of the apples. We'll graft them up, throw them out in the orchard. We only have two trees of every variety. So if something happens, we have backups. So there's only two Macintosh. There's only two Granny Smith. There's only two Black Gilliflower. There's only two
Pig
Pig
snout?
Snout.
Yeah.
Pig Snout. Pig
I
Snout.
think I saw
There's
you posted the other day, you had a handful, are they called scions, the branches?
Yep, yep,
You posted and it was like the happiest day of your life practically. You were grinning ear to ear. I just thought that's again, that's kind of
yeah,
that what we talked about earlier about you just being so real with the
yeah.
people who follow you.
That was that was a very, very special moment. So the reason why I was so happy in that picture specifically was because, there are a lot of apple varieties. There are over 8,000 different apple varieties, but sometimes every once in a blue moon, there are apple varieties that are lost, and they're called lost apples because they were grown hundreds of years ago, but the person that discovered them may have passed away, or maybe they just uh, they're the people that inherit the property don't find it to be that impressive or that meaningful or whatever, and that legacy kind of stops. The only way that an apple tree can continue is through grafting. That's the only way.
Hmm,
As I said, if you take
interesting.
a seed from that apple and plant it, it'll be totally unique. It'll be totally different. It won't be that. You could take 6 million Granny Smith apple seeds. You could take as many Granny Smith apple seeds as there are grains of sand on earth. True fact. As many Granny Smith apple seeds as there are grains of sand on earth.
All right.
Plant them all. You will never have another Granny Smith apple ever again. Ever.
Interesting.
It is it's the most fast it is single-handedly the most fascinating thing I've ever learned. And they are as unique as you and I. They are just as unique as you and I.
So
It
I
is
told you
absolutely unbelievable.
I have my own small apple orchard. I think we have 8 or 10 trees, and they're not doing great. And there's a tree down the street from us where it's totally neglected, and every year it has tons of fruit on it. And it just kills me. And I'm tempted to go knock on their door and say, "Hey, can I grab a few branches off of there, or scions as they're called?" Hey, you
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah.
land. Another thing I saw you post about recently was apparently an adjacent piece of property to you was looking to be developed and you want to preserve that land. Is that something you're still working on?
Yeah, we are actively pursuing that. We have spoken to the seller, um, and that is already in motion, which is great. We, you know, we are really big on renewable energy. We are firm believers of renewable energy, but it needs to be efficient and it needs to be the right location. We're all about, you know, I have said from the very get go, I have nothing against solar, for instance. Solar is the big issue that we have in our state right now. Um, the large solar or the large uh, energy companies are essentially putting in solar farms, and they are essentially coming in and purchasing up just about anything that they can get their hands on,
Mm,
and they're purchasing it or doing long-term leases with this land. And the issue that I have is that we have rooftops, we have homes, we have parking garages. There is so much infrastructure where you could put a solar panel. There's far more land that could use a solar panel than farmland. And my issue is that I've seen what happens when we give away or sell farmland. It's gone. It's gone. And then there comes a time there comes a time where we say, I wish I wouldn't have done that. And that time is always too late. It is the identical it's identical to how we have all these around us, all of these subdivisions that pop up, all of them. They're all these huge subdivisions. And everyone says, well, I wish that we had a green space. I wish we had a park.
mhm.
I wish we had, where are our farmers markets? I said, well, they're all houses now. They're all there are no parks. They're all
Yeah.
houses. There are no farmers markets. They're all houses. And so my issue is not with renewable energy, it's with how it's being implemented. And in the state of Michigan, it is really the Wild West. I mean, just about everything is going, and that's scary for me because again, I'm all for clean air, clean water, all for it. But the problem is that the once the farms go to these large energy companies, they have absolutely no incentive whatsoever to ever grow a crop on it ever again. That's not their incentive. And our food prices keep rising and our farmland keeps shrinking. So
Shrinking, yeah.
I'm adamant in in wanting that.
So is this a
I do not
fundraiser
want a
to
solar farm.
purchase the land? Are you trying to purchase that land?
So not really a fundraiser by any means. We basically just said, look, we sell seeds, we sell fertilizer. If someone buys seeds, if someone buys fertilizer, um, it we would be buying it anyway, right? We would be buying this anyway. But
Mhm.
we don't have the means. We're a small company. We don't have the
Right.
means to just we just don't have the means to just bankroll the purchase of a property, especially since we don't have any expressed intent to immediately start growing stuff on it. Maybe in the next 5 to 7 years, maybe, right? In the next 5 to 7 years, maybe. But in the next 5 to 7 years, that property will not be on the market anymore. So then
So
at that at that point, we're beholden to whoever ends up buying it. And I just want
so
to make
you're
sure
looking to
that
preserve the
it's
land.
us.
You're looking to preserve that
Absolutely, yeah.
land at this point.
Absolutely,
Hey,
yep. So we are
I
not looking to fundraise. We're just looking to purchase it so that we can preserve it and do what we want to do on it.
I appreciate your time with you. And before we wrap up, I want to kind of have a lightning round question. And I'm going to ask you some
Yep,
questions and just answer right off the
yep.
top. Let's start with, has there, is there anything that you can't grow?
Cauliflower.
Cauliflower. Okay. That's a difficult one.
Cauliflower
How about,
stuff. Cauliflower
how
stuff.
about
Cauliflower stuff.
best gardening tool under $20?
Your hands.
Your hands. One vegetable everyone should try growing at least once.
Potatoes. Definitely potatoes.
But
They're
why
easy to grow.
potatoes?
They're so easy to grow, they're so fun, they're so rewarding, and honestly, you can't beat the surprise. With a tomato, you can see what you're growing, and that's fine, it's fun. But when you see a plant growing and you have no idea what's below the soil, there has never been a season when I've grown a potato and I've known what's underneath because you can't see it. It's always a
It's
surprise,
true.
and I don't know anybody that doesn't love surprises. It is so fun. It is the most fun crop to grow. Uh, they are cheap. You can buy them anywhere, but you cannot buy a good surprise. You just can't. You can't buy a good surprise. So
Interesting.
potatoes, they're
I
number
did
one.
not see that one coming. How about the biggest waste
Yeah.
of money for a beginner gardener?
Bagged soil. Bagged soil.
Really? So where
Yes,
do we get
bagged
our
soil is the
soil?
largest waste. You can go to a compost facility. You can go to a landscaping company. You can go to your backyard. If you can loosely amend your soil, cover it, get some organic material down, some good organic all-purpose fertilizer, start with something, build it over time. So many people spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on just bags of soil, and ultimately that bagged soil, it's no better than what you can create for pennies on the dollar. Compost,
Interesting.
there's no replacement for compost, none. Bagged compost is not the same as compost you make or compost that is fresh made and you bring in.
Interesting.
I can go to literally, I can throw a stone in any direction and hit a landscaping company that can sell me a whole yard of dirt, whole yard of soil, which fills 2 or 3 raised beds for $20. But yet
Mhm.
you buy a bag of soil, that bag of soil is 5, $7, and you need 8 of them, 10 of them to fill a raised bed, a single raised bed. Huge waste of money.
When Luke Marion is out spending his 15 minutes in the garden weeding, are you listening to music, podcasts, or do you like the quiet?
I prefer quiet. I prefer quiet.
Okay.
My wife claims I am a hopeless romantic. I am quite the romantic. I just like quiet. I like to hear the birds, and I don't like a lot of distractions.
So we've been talking a lot about and aiming toward people who are already gardening. But if somebody's watching this and they're like, they need an excuse to garden, what would you say? What's your elevator pitch to get someone out and digging in the backyard?
So I always tell everybody, if you are someone that is looking for a way to off gas stress, if you're looking to de-stress, it's by far the cheapest way and the most proven way to reduce stress and anxiety. If you're someone that's looking to be healthier, I can't think of anything healthier than exercise, fresh air, and vegetables. If you're actually looking to add beauty, I can't think of anything more beautiful than a garden. If you're looking to like landscape your house, grow a vegetable garden because it's not only beautiful, but it's also functional. It's going to grow food. And if you're someone that's trying to save money because there's rising food prices and you want to try to save money, there's nothing more cheaper than food you grow yourself. As in a small initial upfront cost, but ultimately you're going to be saving tons and tons of money in the long run. At every turn, a garden is the answer. Um, and then last but not least, if you are someone that fears that they can't garden, and that's like a limiting factor, what I tell everybody is that the act of fearing the fear of failure is stopping you from having a garden, but you automatically fail by never starting. You automatically fail because you've never started. So the worst thing you can do is never start a garden. You'll probably kill quite a few plants your first year. You'll probably kill quite a few plants your second year, but you will learn. And then from there, a garden becomes a very wonderful resource for therapy, enjoyment, entertainment, food, health, nutrition, community. It is a wonderful, wonderful thing. and only positive things come from having a garden. Never seen a negative.
Well, Luke, talking with you and learning more about your story, it really is the American dream. Somebody who took, a childhood passion and turned it into a business, and you're doing great things in preserving the history of agriculture as well. And I just, you've been an inspiration to me, and I'm sure to a lot of other people out there.
I appreciate that, David. I really appreciate that. It's honestly an honor that you've had me on, and I've had a pleasure getting to talk to you. It's been really fun.
So let's give you a couple of plugs. I had your book and I loaned it to somebody and they didn't give it back to me. So I can't hold that up right now. But the book is available, I'm assuming, Amazon and everywhere else.
Yep, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and our website. Yep, it's the Autopilot Garden.
And tell us a little about your website, where we can get those $2 seeds.
Yeah, so it's MIgardener, MIgardener.com, and all of our seeds, nearly all of our seeds, are $2 a pack. Um, yep, we have over 800 different varieties of vegetable seeds. They are all heirloom. They are all grown using organic methods, and they're not all certified organic, but they are all grown using organic methods, and they're all grown by small farmers right here in the U.S. or grown by us on our farm. Um, and if anyone ever has any questions or needs an answer to a gardening question, on our website we have a portal where they can ask a gardening question or they can send an email to gardenhelp@migardener.com. And we have a designated group of people that answer those questions day in and day out, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. They're answering questions and helping people to grow a garden.
And YouTube. Any idea how many YouTube videos you've done up to this point?
I have lost track, honestly. I know it's over 1,500. It might even be over
Wow.
2,000 videos. But we basically do a video every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and sometimes even more than that if I feel like it. We have uploaded every single week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, sometimes even more than that since 2011. So it is an absolute ton of videos, and every single video you're going to learn something. You're going to be entertained, you're going to learn something, and you will absolutely become a better gardener if you seek out the right question through searching for our videos. I tell everybody, search whatever topic you're looking for, type it in, put "Am I Gardener" at the very end. So how to grow tomatoes, "Am I Gardener?" It
Yep.
will pop that up. Um, how how to amend your soil, "Am I Gardener?" Throw "Am I Gardener" at the end, and that tells YouTube that you want to see our videos that have those keywords, and it will pull our video up right at the very top of the page for no matter what you want to watch.
Great tip. Great tip. And I want to say thank you to you and thank you to your wife. It sounds like she's been a big part of your success as well. And all the staff that put out all the orders and man the store. It sounds like you have a great operation. Just thanks to everyone for all they do, because us gardeners, we appreciate it.
I appreciate it too so much, David. I know they do. Everyone when they go into work in the morning, they are excited and they like filling orders actually. It's a lot better when there's something to do when there's not rather than when there's not something to do. So we really do appreciate it, and I appreciate the time that we've had and the ability for me to kind of share in kind of a glimpse into MIgardener. So yeah,
Luke, Marion, and MIgardener, thanks so much for being our guest.
thank you so much, David. I appreciate it.
A huge thanks to Luke Marion for stopping by the show to talk all things gardening. You can find Luke online on Facebook at MyGardener and online at mygardener.com. Definitely give him a follow if you haven't already. Thanks for tuning into this episode. If you liked what you heard, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next week.